People joining as we and thank you for recording, Megan. My name is Jennifer Prophet. I am the director of the Hopeful Neighborhood Project, and we are sort of the managing sponsors of National Good Neighbor Day. National Good Neighbor Day, just to set the stage a little bit, is a holiday in September, on September 28th. It was signed as a proclamation by Jimmy Carter in 1978. And the celebration then has kind of ebbed and flowed over time. There wasn't any infrastructure that was put together for celebrating this. It's just really any community, any neighbor, any person, any city that want or state that wants to celebrate National Good Neighbor Day is free to do so. So it's sort of ebbed and flowed over time, and we really, in the last several years, have put together a task force of people that want to create and grow this movement. So you're joining that just by joining today, joining and helping us. Create momentum around neighboring on National Good Neighbor Day, which is September 28th. I want to start by thanking Megan for and the Community Works for hosting this, Community Building Hub for hosting this for us and providing a chance to have this conversation. So Megan is here to be she'll probably jump in some. She has some things to share, but also helping on the tech side and adding in the chat and questions, et cetera, et cetera. So I appreciate that. We had a huge number of people registered for this, almost 100 people registered, so that is really exciting. But also means that probably we have 100 different reasons why you jumped on this call. And so I wanted to just frame this a little bit. What we're going to talk about is really we're going to hear from two people who started a city or statewide celebration for National Good Neighbor Day. And we know that there's a group of people who want to start a larger celebration. So that's going to be their story today. But some of you are on because you haven't celebrated before, or you've just celebrated yourself and you wonder how to get a larger group, maybe your neighborhood involved. And I think you'll pick up things from what they've done in this conversation today. But if it doesn't answer all your questions, even though we'll have a question and answer time and share resources and stuff, we do have coaching available. So I just want you to know that we'll all always available to talk through your specific circumstance. So if we don't hit your individual questions today, because we're taking a little bit of a broader view of how to start a bigger sort of celebration, then please, I'll give you all the contact information to talk to me one-on-one to figure out how you can get started in your particular context. The other thing before we get started that I wanted to clarify is that we are talking about National Good Neighbor Day. It is one day. However, bigger celebrations, like in Missouri, I think David was the one to start this actually, said one day is kind of hard for a bigger celebration. What if we do a whole week? And so Julia in San Francisco also adopted that. So you can apply this either as a day or a week in your celebration. So this would work for a day. It does work for a week. I kind of use those terms interchangeably because we have some people that are celebrating for a day or a week. If you decide to celebrate for a week, you get to decide if you're going to start your week on September 28th and go after. That's what's worked best in Missouri and in San Francisco, but you get to make those kinds of decisions because it's your own holiday. No one owns this holiday. We're just kind of trying to steward the movement. Um, okay, so with those notes out of the way, I want to just mention the agenda. This is mostly going to be a panel discussion where we're hearing from David and Julia. I have some questions prepared for them. You may have questions as they're talking. Add those into the chat or jot them down. When they're finished, before we get into your questions, we're going to share some resources that we have for you because that might answer some of your questions. And then we'll go into a time of questions from the audience that we'll get to as many as possible. And we're going to wrap up at 1 o'clock. So we might not get all the questions, but you will have everyone's contact information at the end. We're also recording this so you can share it with other people in your community. And we'll have a survey at the end to hear where you're at and how we can support you in continuing this conversation. Okay, so with all of that housekeeping out of the way, I want to introduce Julia and David. I'm going to start with Julia. Julia Geddes is the founder of San Francisco Good News Lab. It was formerly Good News Lab was the former name. It is now Good Neighbor Lab. She's the founder of San Francisco Good Neighbor Week. She has a resume and working in community that's so long that I was going to read it all, and I thought, here's the highlight. The highlight is Julia is highly committed and passionate about her local community. She's also highly committed and passionate about other people being activated in her community, but in their own communities as well. And so she has so much experience locally. She has experience globally, but what she really brings to the table is a passion and an ability to take that passion and put it into action. And she has been a real gift to this movement. And so we're so glad to have her here. David Burton. David uh, is a community development specialist with University of Missouri Extension, but he's the founder of Missouri Good Neighbor Week. He is been extremely influential in Missouri in getting neighboring to be in the conversation. He has been really influential for me in our work with Hopeful Neighborhood, coming in as an early partner. He started Missouri Good Neighbor Week, and we came on the tail end and said, let's work on this together. So we've been sort of collaborating around this in Missouri. I'm based in St. Louis, so that works out. But also just really helping me think about how to make this a national movement and using Missouri to test a lot of things to think about nationally. And so I'm just so pleased to have you both here, to call you colleagues and friends. Thank you for being willing to share. I'm going to stop my screen share so that you can see the panelists a little bit better. And then we'll start off with our first question. Hold on. My Zoom likes to take its own time when it does things. Okay, so our first question is just starting off with a brief description about what your Good Neighbor Week looks like. So tell us kind of when it started and what the celebration looks like in your area. And we'll get into kind of the deeper questions, but just kind of set the stage of the context. And Julia, if you don't mind, we'll start with you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. It's really good to be here. And thanks, Jennifer, for the nice introduction. Also want to give a shout out to Savannah and Nate who are on the call. We all did the Neighborhood Village Project cohort together that Savannah runs. And actually graduating from NVP last spring was what led me to start San Francisco Good Neighbor Week the week after I graduated. So it's really special to have you both here. As a brief overview of San Francisco Good Neighbor Week, and I'm happy to answer questions throughout the call. When I heard about National Good Neighbor Day through the Zoom call that Jennifer led last spring, at the end of the spring, I looked at what other cities and states were doing, and I saw that some of them had Good Neighbor Awards and events and official proclamations. So those were kind of three things that I wanted to make sure I brought to San Francisco were awards, events, and proclamations. And then I added two more tracks to how we run San Francisco Good Neighbor Week. One was Block Leader Resources. I wanted to use San Francisco Good Neighbor Week as a collaborative opportunity for organizations in San Francisco to support individual block leaders. And then lastly, I wanted to add a technology and innovation track, which was really unique and allowed us to start the country's first Good Neighbor Hackathon, which is a really special event that Savannah attended because she was in town. But yeah, I would say in brief, San Francisco Good Neighbor Week, it was our first year doing it. So I'm still kind of wrapping it up and coming off the high a little bit and getting ready for 2026. But it was very ambitious and very broad. And my idea was always to engage as many neighborhood and community partners as possible in the celebration. So I tried to decentralize the holiday as much as I could, which I'll be talking about later.
Thank you. David, you want to give us a little bit of Missouri Good Neighbor Week?
If we were on a time crunch, I would just keep it simple and say, I fell into this by accident. But that might be underselling, I guess. But I just had a personal conviction, my wife and I both, that we needed to do better in connecting with our neighbors. We just had this moment where we realized we'd been in our house for 15 years And when the old neighbors moved out, new ones moved in, we didn't even bother to learn their name. And so we really only knew the name of one neighbor, and we felt like we should do better. So it was a personal conviction for us to start learning neighbors' names. And in the course of doing that, I, fished around online, thought, I wonder if there's any sort of holiday for neighbors. I was looking for an excuse, a way to ease the awkwardness of ringing a doorbell and saying, "Hi, I'm the neighbor across the street that's never spoken to you in 5 years, but I'm here now." And and I happened upon this National Good Neighbor Day that existed. Thought, okay, that gives me an excuse, right? To get the neighbors together. This is why we're doing it. And so that's how I feel like, I kind of backed into it. But turns out, some of you may know Becky McCrae in Iowa. She's a community development specialist. She has something that she speaks on and has written about called the Idea Friendly Method. And it's her approach to developing events. And she advocates for starting small. Her steps are gather the crowd, build connections, take small steps. And her research suggests this helps prevent burnout. It helps move things forward sort of organically, that you begin small and other people that are interested in it join with you and help expand the program. Or if it doesn't attract anybody else, then you let it die gracefully, and you don't have a big public failure on your hands, like if you were pushing some sort of big event. So I didn't know about her suggestions until after COVID, but when I look back, really prior to COVID, that's the method I was using. We started as a personal project, and then the following year, a few other neighbors joined together, and it grew from there. I don't know if I'm supposed to go into how it became a recognized week with the state yet, or if that's later on.
Yeah, go ahead and just tell us a little bit about that. And then I'll transition us to the next question.
Okay. Well, yeah, we did our own personal thing. Then we did Good Neighbor Day one year in our neighborhood, and then the following year I thought, I'm going to contact the city that I live in and see if they'd like to do something citywide. And they said yes. And so we did, a mailing. We did some surveying. We did a couple of events around the city. It was fairly low key, but it was really trying to get people to connect with their neighbors and sort of a communication loop to tell us what they were doing and to recognize some of those things. And the following year, the next step is your county. And I got some sponsors at the county level and a lot of media coverage. We gave prizes out to participants sort of through a random drawing. And I was at my local Chamber of Commerce meeting in my community. And right after that had happened, and my state representative sat down next to me and said, "I see, you have a lot of participation in the county and a lot of interest. What are your plans for this?" And well, nobody had ever asked me that. And I wasn't really even thinking about that yet, but I felt pressure to come up with something, right? And I said, well, I think in Missouri it'd be cool to celebrate for a whole week instead of just one day. And so 3 months later, he called and said, "Hey, I have a bit of legislation in committee for Missouri Good Neighbor Week. Would you come up and testify? It won't pass this year. It'll take a couple of years, but would you come up?" And I did. And then through a fun set of awkward circumstances, it got passed on the very last day of the legislature, and the governor signed it. So Missouri Good Neighbor Week became official. It's September 28th to October 4th. And so then I really had to start thinking, okay, now this really is a statewide thing. How do we get more partners? How do we grow the impact of this? What's that infrastructure going to look like?
So Julia,
I was just going to say, it was interesting in committee. He told me no one would. I had 5 minutes. No one would ask questions. I was there for most a half an hour. Everybody asked questions. We picked up 20 co-sponsors, because who wants to say they don't support the idea of being a good neighbor?
Right.
They all had different definitions of it and different angles on it, but nobody was going to say they were opposed to that.
Yeah, I think that's well, first of all, I think that in some ways there's a contrast between how San Francisco started and how Missouri started. San Francisco started pretty big right away and it
Hmm.
was really successful in that. And Missouri sort of started small with one family and then it grew and it grew and it grew. Um, but I think there is actually a common thread. And one of it is this reaching out to kind of like-minded individuals. So, David started, I think there's if Megan, as hosting, can you go and mute anyone who's accidentally off mute?
It's not letting me right now, but yeah, I think
Okay.
it's going. Yeah. So if you can just mute yourselves, that would be great. Thank you.
I'm always the one carrying my computer around the house on these kind of webinars as I'm listening and hitting unmute on accident and realizing someone heard my laundry. So there's no judging. But if you realize you're off mute, then go ahead and mute so I don't get distracted. Um, anyway, the common thread in this, though, I think, is finding like-minded partners and kind of growing it together. So Julia found partners right away. I think the other common thread in this is that at least my experience, I think Julia's experience, David's experience is just what David said. We find this to be a real sort of galvanizing thing, especially at a partner level. It looks different, and I know it's gonna, we'll talk about it's difficult to get people to come out sometimes, and there's all these things that gatherings still have challenges with right now. But in terms of being a good neighbor, we've found this to be really popular, especially among people who are already sort of focused on community building. This is a good kind of galvanizing thing. So, Julia, I'm going to turn it back to you and have you talk just a little bit more about your why. You talked about it a little bit, but like, why sink your teeth into this and not just, bake cookies for a couple of neighbors? Why did you get this like big vision? If you can talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I'm really bad at starting small. I wish I was better at that. But I tend to start big. I'm very ambitious. I will say that my experiences in education and in product management. So I started on my career as a classroom teacher and then worked in product and software companies for a long time. And as a product manager, I learned a lot about how to launch a minimum viable product. And for me, when I launch an MVP, I think about the scope a lot and the goals I want to accomplish and what's the like smallest way I can accomplish the biggest goals. And so for me, when I thought about the 5 tracks for Good Neighbor Week, it was important for me to have all 5, even if I did them in a small way. So I would say in terms of laddering up and growing and expanding the holiday year over year, there's so many opportunities to do that. And I can talk about all the ways we're already going to grow the holiday in 2026. But the framework that we created in 2025 it is going to sort of be there for a while and is pretty ambitious. And so I would say that's just kind of the small versus big thing. And then I think the other question there is like, why did I choose the city? Because there's so many units that you can choose to work with, whether it's your block or your neighborhood or your city or your state. And I chose city because I'm very active in the city of San Francisco, and that's kind of the unit that I define for my work and my community. And so through Good Neighbor Week, I tried to do a lot both on my block. I hosted my neighbors for a potluck on my block, as well as neighborhoods. I'm developing a neighborhood advisory council now to help lead the holiday and working with neighborhood leaders across San Francisco. San Francisco seems big. There's over 1 million of us, but it's really small geographically. It's only 7 by 7 miles, famously. So I was able to bike across the city and have a lot of partner meetings in person. So I think, as Jennifer alluded to my background, I was already working on citywide initiatives, and I've been involved in citywide initiatives in San Francisco for a long time. So I think it was natural for me to, while I wanted to meet my neighbors as well, and that was definitely a part of my why. I also was like, well, why, while I learned how to meet my neighbors, why don't I help everyone else in San Francisco help meet their neighbors too? So it was kind of like let's go on a learning journey together. I did want to share the starter guide that I'm developing. So I'll just put the link in the chat. It's still a work in progress, but for folks who have specific questions, I know there's so many different aspects we can discuss today, from the personal to the leadership level to the concrete, and this includes like screenshots of different emails I sent to partners, and I'll be adding more. I'm very transparent with uh, everything that went into launching the first Good Neighbor Week in San Francisco. So if you have any suggestions for what else you want to see in there, let me know. But I'm kind of putting it all out there. And there's a spreadsheet I linked to that literally links to everything I did in 2025 and how we're going to grow it in 2026. But yeah, I don't know if I took inspiration from the startup weeks with tracks, Savannah. I think I was more thinking like conferences with tracks and different themes. But that's a good question.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's, again, it looks really different in both Missouri and San Francisco in some ways, but there's some threads that I want to just keep trying to pull through so that maybe you can see that thread in you as well. And one of the things that David and Julia both did is they used and activated their existing networks, or I would even say their existing strengths. So like where were they already connected? Where did their strengths lie? And then built sort of around that, bringing in partners around their strengths around in those networks. And that's going to be true for each of you on this call. So whether you're thinking, I want to, meet my four neighbors and start in this way, or whether you're thinking my city could do this too, or I know a state legislator, whatever you're thinking, you have gifts and you have some existing networks. And that was a really successful place to start for both of them. I just saw someone say, I'm trying to get this off the ground in my library for a couple of years. First of all, kudos for doing that. Second of all, I love libraries. And so I'd love to chat with you more. But third of all, use that thread as well. Like, where are some of the strengths in the library system? Who do you already know? Who are you connected to? Who's been partners on other things? Maybe see if that kind of thing can start to gather some momentum. So that kind of transitions us into my next question, which is lessons learned. And so, Jewel, let's start with David this time. So, David, do you want to share some of like lessons learned that you'd like to share with the group as you have been growing Missouri Good Neighbor Week?
Yeah, well, one of my lessons learned is that there's only one of me. So, and I have other responsibilities. So, how can I leverage the work? How can I multiply my efforts through other connections and other people? And you kind of allude to that. And really, when I first pitched to my boss this idea of including neighboring in my community development work, I was met with a lot of enthusiasm at the university level, and they said I could commit 5% of my time to that. That looks like enthusiasm from the now it's been a number of years. Now we're at a point where it's really kind of 100% of my work in different types of ways. But it took time, and some of this doesn't happen overnight. And so there's only one of me. So who else can I get to be enthusiastic about it? Who, from the very beginning, I wanted to be able to collect the data and the impact so we could keep telling the story, but I couldn't own it. Just like you have said, no one owns National Good Neighbor Day.
Mhm.
And so it was, what can I provide you with? What can I give you that'll help you be a success in your community? Make this fit with Excelsior Springs, make this fit with Manchester, Missouri. What does it look like in those communities? And so that's really been my big lesson is I can't own it. I can't micromanage it. What can I provide or do that helps other people to successfully make it their own and run with it in their community? And one of the things we added, what was that, 3 years ago, I think, Jennifer, we started talking with Missouri Good Neighbor Week, people can report their acts of neighboring, and we kept setting these goals every year and kept blowing past the goals. And so last year we had over 42,000 acts of neighboring reported during that week through Missouri Good Neighbor Week. And so I think 2 or 3 years ago, we were already kind of recognizing some of those. We're asking people to nominate their most engaged neighbor in their community. We were going to pick some across the state to recognize, and then we added a city component. Whereas, what city could accumulate the most points through the most reported acts of neighboring and things, and adding that little bit of competition to it really helped it take a big jump, because suddenly cities are like, oh, maybe we should do a campaign around this. And I
Mhm.
Again, they only want to meet, so I can't manage the campaign in Houston, Missouri, and Excelsior Springs, and Lee's Summit, and all of them. But they've all started popping up saying we want to be involved with this. We want to make it our own. What does that look like to partner? How could we achieve status as the most neighborly city in Missouri? And that's a multiplier effect because I can't be everywhere.
And I think what you've done so well, David, in Missouri, and actually have seen this in San Francisco too, is you haven't tried to manage, but you have given a vision. So you've given a like, here's what, you can do whatever you want, but we're going to do this engaged neighbor program. The city, you'll get points for these things, and by giving a little bit of a vision and some actionable items around that, you're not controlling it, but you're helping people know how to activate. Not just saying celebrate however you want, and then leaving it at that, but saying, and here's a couple of ways that you can plug in, and it's helped people, I think, know how to activate. So I appreciate that. Julie?
Yeah.
Julia, sorry, I've never said that before. It's the stress of the camera. Julia.
All good. Yeah, it's a good question. I'll share in terms of lessons, I'll share a few things that I think worked well and a few things that didn't. Um, and I'm going to write a blog post about this and integrate this into the starter guide as well. It's sort of in the 10 steps, but I'll say a few things that went well. Number one, doing it in the first place. If you're on the fence about whether you should do it, I strongly encourage you to do it. And those of you who've heard me say this before know that I say this all the time, but I've never done anything as successful in my life as launching San Francisco Good Neighbor Week. There is something in the air right now around neighboring and community building that Savannah and Nate know more about than I do, but there is, and Jennifer and David, like I'm not an expert on neighboring, but I am an expert on doing this. And it is so powerful. I've been in the social impact community building space for a long time, and nothing I've done has gotten the reception that Good Neighbor Week does. So I'll say, first of all, lesson learned is like, wow, there's something about that Good Neighbor brand, which is so strong. So if you're on the fence, highly encourage you to do it, especially if you're looking, like Jennifer said, to rally diverse partners together. It's a really strong brand to do that with. The other thing that worked well is just as David and Jennifer were saying, like doing this in partnership with a lot of organizations. This is not Julia's holiday. It's not Jennifer's holiday. It's not David's holiday. It's all of our holiday. And I think that starting at the very beginning with key partners, I see some people asking about libraries and schools. Those were some of the first institutions I reached out to in San Francisco, making sure that libraries and schools were on board, and we're only going to grow those partnerships this year, was really, really important. The third thing that worked well, I think, for me is being a random person. So if you're a random person on this call, I encourage you to do it, because there's actually a lot of strengths from just being a resident and bringing this holiday to your region. I'm not a politician. I'm not a highly visible public figure. I'm not affiliated with a particular program. If anything, people know me as the neighborhood bulletin board person that Jennifer was talking about. But I think being a random independent resident in the neighborhood is actually a really powerful way to start. So I think that helped me too, get over that initial suspicion where people were like, who's paying you? And what's your angle? And when they figured out nobody was paying me and I didn't have an angle besides neighboring, it was really compelling. And then the last thing I'll mention that worked well was I tried to replicate what Jennifer did when she empowered me to launch this in San Francisco, which was balancing guidance with empowerment. So Jennifer was kind of like, hey, do whatever you want, I'll support you, but here's some resources. And that's actually how I am with San Francisco neighborhoods and with individual neighborhood leaders that I talk with every day. I'm like, this isn't my holiday, it's your holiday. Do what makes sense for your block, do what makes sense for your neighborhood. But I can create some shared resources and infrastructure that we can all use. For example, a citywide Good Neighbor nomination form that took me like 10 minutes to make. It was a Google form last year, and literally making a Google form, all of a sudden I'm launching a citywide Good Neighbor Award celebration, right? So things that are really small that can be shared infrastructure were really powerful. So I think those are some of the things that worked well. In terms of what I want to improve on this year, the first thing is formalizing the support I have. That's kind of the biggest theme. I didn't sleep a lot putting this together. And I continue to struggle with the amount of time this takes and not getting paid for it. So it is definitely a labor of love. And I have people reaching out all the time asking how they can help, but being able to formalize structures for how people can help with the holiday, having a formal steering committee. I'm so excited to have a neighborhood advisory council this year. Last year, it was just me having coffee and lunch with hundreds of people. And it takes a lot of time, just the partnership development piece. So I'm looking forward to trying to formalize the support and the leadership around the holiday this year, which some of you might choose to do before you launch a holiday, but I did not. And then the other thing that didn't work as well as it could have, depending on your perspective, is the trade-off that I talk about often between relationships and automation. And Jennifer knows this because I was reaching out to her throughout my planning, kind of freaking out, being like, oh my God, my email inbox is so unmanageable. Everything was very personal for me. So we leaned on personal in every decision. And that includes personal communication with every Good Neighbor Award winner, asking them for t-shirt sizes in one-on-one emails. I didn't have a Google form for that. Many of them were like, oh, can we have coffee? I'd love to meet you. So I was building hundreds of relationships across the city last year, which is great. That's kind of the trade-off, but definitely the automation around some of the systems, there's going to be that trade-off between efficiency and relationships. And I chose relationships, but you don't have to make that choice every single time. And then the last thing I'll say is a area of improvement for me this year is being more clear with sort of my success metrics, quote unquote, and what my measurable outcomes are going to be, the way David has acts of neighboring in Missouri. What we're going to do in San Francisco this year is focus more on the 0 to 1 of people meeting a neighbor for the first time. So I'm really focused on the 0 to 1 experience for people who do not know a neighbor and then do because of Good Neighbor Week, and blocks who did not have a communication channel and then do because of a Good Neighbor Week. And I've experienced that myself because my block was not on a WhatsApp group until Good Neighbor Week. And then because I hosted a potluck and someone else was like, should we start a WhatsApp group? Now we are. So having like crisply defined metrics and outcomes, I think is an area of improvement for us as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I got so enthralled listening, I forgot the next question. So hold on. All right. I would love to know a highlight, a favorite memory or a highlight of celebrating this week, just to give us a bit of a I don't know, a vision. And I'm gonna go first because I think, and then I'm gonna have David and then Julia. So if you weren't thinking about this before, you have a little chance to think about it. And so I've told this story before, so you may have heard this. We also have at the national level. So if you just find this and you aren't connected locally to anyone, you can report your active neighboring on the national level. So you can, fill out my little form and report it. And those reports are anything from like libraries and bigger institutions to just, a person making cookies, which I think is fantastic. And so I had one of those, people making cookies kind of reports come in, and she was very specific. She bought a candle and some cookies and these kinds of very specific, here's what I did. And I left it at the door of 5 neighbors. And, we had some good conversations with the ones who were their home. Some weren't. And to me, in general, that's the spirit of the holiday, right? Just like Julia said, someone who wasn't engaged to kind of get engaged with a neighbor or to strengthen a relationship with a neighbor, like that's the spirit. I love to think big, but the spirit is even within the big that we're making these one-on-one relationships. So I loved that report, but it was also fairly regular, right? Until 3 or 4 reports down. And 3 or 4 reports down, I get this report that wasn't actually a report, it was a thank you. And it was a woman who said, I got at my front door, and she listed the exact things this woman had listed. And at that point in the report, I didn't have a location, just a state. So somewhere in Ohio, this person had given a candle, and somewhere in Ohio, a person had received the same candle. And she said, I've been on disability. I've been really discouraged. And this really made an impact on me. And I wanted to reach out and say thank you. Um, and so that is my favorite story, because we don't know sometimes with these little things that we decide to do that sometimes we're like, does this candle really matter? Does celebrating something like this really matter? And to have that like feedback of like, no, I was in my house feeling discouraged, disconnected, lonely, all the things that we know are happening in people's lives, overwhelmed. And this candle and this cookie made a big difference to me. So that's my sort of North Star in all this when I'm feeling tired or discouraged or like, is it worth it? Should I really start this? There's someone out there who needs a candle and a cookie. So, um, anyway, that's my story. David, do you have a story to share?
Oh, I was trying to limit the number of stories I share, right?
I love that.
One of my early memories has stuck with me when we started introducing ourselves to neighbors because we wanted to say that we loved our neighbors, but the opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy. And we had had apathy. We had just sat home. We didn't even know their names. And so knocking on this elderly neighbor's door with plate of cookies, and these are great cookies. My wife makes great cookies. You want to open the door, I'm telling you. And our contact information, and she barely cracked the door, like one eye out. And I already knew her name and said, hello. I said, we're just, checking our neighbors for National Good Neighbor Day. We wanted to give you some cookies. And she opened the door and she goes, what do I owe you for these? And it was just an early reminder to me that uh, people are unaccustomed to this still and how much disconnection there is. I see and talk with her with much more regularity now, but at that point, it was obvious that this was a rare event in her life, and uh, doing those types of things has had a ripple effect through our small neighborhood where people get together and have done things to get to know each other. Whereas prior to that, it was we were really kind of reflecting the culture of our whole neighborhood, where people came home and hit the garage door opener and went in, and you never saw them again. So much of that has changed for the better.
Yeah, thank you, David. Julia, do you have anything to share?
Was the question like a favorite memory of it?
Yes. Yes.
Um, yeah, and
Highlight.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, or a highlight, whatever.
Or
Yeah,
a
just
highlight. I noticed
yeah.
Sam Ragland is on the call, so I'll just give a shout out to some of the local news work we did. Sam works at the American Press Institute. She was really helpful to me as well. I think just doing a lot of firsts was a highlight for me, but one of those things, and I'll just say broadly, like launching a Good Neighbor Week allows you to Trojan horse a lot of things you care about under the Good Neighbor Week umbrella, which is why I highly recommend doing it. And one of the things I always try to Trojan horse into San Francisco is support for local news. So when I think about um, local civic institutions that I'm using Good Neighbor Week as an opportunity to connect residents to. So it's not just connecting residents to each other, but connecting them to their schools, their libraries, their newsrooms. I'm one of the few people who adds newsrooms to that equation, but I think there's a growing number of local news advocacy folks who believe in that. And so one thing I did was we launched citywide community listening sessions during Good Neighbor Week that were run by local newsrooms, like the neighborhood paper. And I have a lot of friends who run neighborhood papers and local news in San Francisco through my work. I used to be on the board of the San Francisco Press Club, and so again, just sort of using my network and doing something new was a real highlight. And I attended most of those. I tried, those were what I call signature events. So I distinguished between on the calendar events, a signature event that was developed especially for Good Neighbor Week versus an event that people might have been organizing anyway. And those signature events were really fun to organize. And I'm looking forward to growing them in partnership with local newsrooms this year.
Yeah, thank you. Another highlight for me was watching Good Neighbor Week in San Francisco just really take off last year. It was a big highlight for me. Okay, well, that concludes kind of my questions for the panel. I'm going to share my screen again and just show some resources we have for you. And I'll do that as quickly as possible, so that we can have time for your questions. And so let me do that.
All right. And while Jennifer's doing that, we do have a lot of people on the call. So if you have a question you haven't put in the chat yet, that will probably be best. And we'll try to get through all those. I know quite a few people submitted some in the sign up form. So we've got a ton of questions, but if you will, go ahead and put any other questions in the chat for us.
Okay, well, I think my screen is sharing, but it is not advancing. So give me a second. It's a little unhappy with me today. It says it's moving. There we go. Okay. So Julia's mentioned one of these resources already, and I have a screenshot of that as well. But I want to start with, well, I'll just read through them. We have the Community Building Hub has a special, it's going to offer a special area of the hub, which I'll let Megan talk about, for people who are organizing Good Neighbor, especially larger Good Neighbor celebrations, so that you can find some of the special tools for that in one place, as well as have conversation with other people that are hosting sort of bigger events. And so she'll talk about that in a minute. Julia's been so gracious and articulate in laying out how she did San Francisco Good Neighbor Week. She has put that on a website, on her website, and has other resources there too. So I've got a little screenshot of that, and she linked it earlier. So that's a resource for you that is really valuable. I am working on a How to Start a Good Neighbor Week guide. I am not quite finished. That's going to be a little bit of a living document. I will have a version that I'm going to send out probably towards the end of the week to anyone who wants it, based on our survey at the end. And that'll take sort of things that I've learned from all different places that are hosting bigger events and putting it kind of together for you. We also have Getting Started guides. So if you're like, I'm not really thinking citywide here. I'm thinking more about my library or about my neighborhood association. We do have Getting Started guides for those as well. And then we offer individual coaching. So I'm going to turn it over. I'll show you all of these different things, but that's the whole scope. All right, Megan, do you want to talk about the Community Building Hub a little bit?
Yeah. So the Community Building Hub is a new platform that launched last year just for local leaders who are strengthening neighborhoods and connecting neighbors. And so as a part of that, we've partnered with National Good Neighbor Day to launch a specific space just for Good Neighbor Week. And so if you are interested, right, I know there's going to be a ton of questions. And then like once we actually get started, there's going to be way more questions about like, what does this look like? How do we partner with folks, engage our neighbors? This will be the spot for you. So we'll have a space, right, just for you to put in any questions, ideas. And then on the next slide, you'll see we've also are going to have a resource library with different things that were shared today and different resources that we developed throughout leading up to the end of September. And so what'll happen if you're interested in hosting a Good Neighbor Week or a larger Good Neighbor celebration in your city, in that follow-up form, you'll be able to note that and you'll get access to the hub to keep this conversation going through the end of October.
Thank you, Megan. This is one of those sort of instances like Julia was talking about, how we definitely want to form one-on-one relationships with you. And that's what the coaching's for. But if you want quicker answers or answers from more than one person or just to be better connected, we've created this hub to kind of systematize and democratize some of that answering of questions to help. So you'll be able to jump on and answer questions for other people if you've had experience, even if it's not a Good Neighbor Week, but you've had experience in that area before. You can jump on. Julia can jump on. David could jump on. Megan, I could jump on, and then all the rest of you to answer questions a little bit faster. But that doesn't mean we don't want to have one-on-one conversations as well. Just trying to help make your life as easy as possible if you choose to sort of undertake something like this. My computer's so slow, but in a second you will see Julia's getting the starter guide on her website. Julia, do you want to say anything additional about this as a resource?
No, I'll put everything I know on here. So if you have specific questions, and I saw the question about financing, there's going to be a section here about financing by the end of the week as well. So yeah, just email me if there's specific things that you'd like to see on there, but I'm an open book.
Perfect. Thank you so much for it. All right. Well, with my computer delay, it'll come. All the getting started guides from National Good Neighbor Day will be on that website. That'll come up in a second. And that's at nationalgoodneighborday.org/guides. Is my audio and stuff okay still, Megan? I'm worried because this is so slow.
Yeah, you're all good.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to mess with that anymore. I'm going to uh Actually, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide where we're up here. I'll start taking questions now, but I'm going to leave this up so that you can write down our contact information. Again, we've got, a bunch of really busy people on this call. So we want to make contact with you. But for Julia and for David, just remember that they are running very robust things in their own location. And so Julia specifically, if you have things that you want to know, she will add it to that site. So let her know. Like, here's a question that I have, and she will add it, and hopefully that will help the rest of us. Also learn from her, and then individual coaching, if you want a call set up, then that will be with me. If I am unavailable, then Megan's always available, or I'll reach out to Julie or David. So the coaching will start with me unless I can't do it. And on that website, you'll see a Calendly link. And so basically you just say, I want to schedule a coaching call, and you'll be able to pop on my calendar at a time that works for you. And there'll be a little section on there that says, to talk about National Good Neighbor Day. Okay, so
Jennifer, I might
yes,
jump on and add that my email address is actually
sorry.
burtond@missouri.edu. That's
I
fine.
I did
I
I
know you're
did
trying
even
to
look it
save me
up
time. That's what it
at the
is. You're
end.
you're trying to protect
Right.
my schedule. But I love to hear from people, and if you have questions, I'm glad to connect and help in any way I can. But it is
Excellent.
burtond@missouri.edu.
I would fix it real fast, except I don't trust my computer to do that.
Jennifer, I'm happy to
Uh,
speak to financing a little bit. I know there were questions about
yeah,
that in the chat, and that's an
yeah,
important topic that we haven't gotten to yet.
yes,
In
please
terms
do.
of financing, a couple of things I wanted to share from my perspective. First of all, you don't need a lot of money to start the holiday, and I think the holiday grows with how much time you're willing to put into it. So if you need sorry, my cat's here. If you need money to pay yourself, I think that's probably going to be the biggest limiting factor. I was able to just spend a lot of free time and time in general on it, but I didn't have a lot of funding. No one was paying me. And it's been interesting this year because the inaugural launch was so successful. So I have a lot of interest now in growing the holiday and in sponsorships and in partnerships. Like once you're successful, everyone reaches out. But that first year, it's just been interesting, like people reaching out to me being like, how did you do this for free? How did you do this for free? And I'm like, well, you can actually do a lot for free. So those of you who've been in the neighboring space for a while know that that's true. But I'm continually shocking people with how cheaply we launched Good Neighbor Week last year. Our biggest corporate sponsor was $2,000, which is kind of hilarious. So yeah, and the thing I'll mention, I mentioned this in the chat, is I didn't have that sponsorship page up until September 15th, 2025. And yeah, I mean, it just came together so last minute. Everything came together last minute for me because I didn't even find out about the holiday until a few months before I launched it. And I didn't have time to put together a sponsorship page. That's not where I was focusing my energy. I was focusing my energy on partner outreach for people who were going to participate. Um, and Sutter Health, which is a large healthcare provider on the West Coast, they reached out to me and said, can we partner with you? We want to support you. And then this amazing person at Sutter Health said, I have this idea of doing free medical health care screenings across every neighborhood in San Francisco during Good Neighbor Week. So again, Sutter Health reached out to me and suggested that to me, that they wanted to offer free healthcare screenings across neighborhoods during Good Neighbor Week. I was not even thinking about that. It was just not on my priority list. So I think that just shows you the impact of the brand and the inspiration behind doing something like this. And this year I'm in a more complicated spot because now there's a lot of corporate sponsors that want to sponsor in order to get their logo on everything. And I'm kind of new to navigating the world of corporate sponsors. But now that I have a neighborhood advisory council, I have a group of people that I've been bouncing ideas off of. And I think we might actually decline some of the corporate sponsorships because you can imagine some of the big tech companies in San Francisco that might want to sponsor, and they don't necessarily feel mission aligned with getting to know your neighbors. In fact, they might feel like some folks might feel like they're part of the problem and driving people apart and having them spend more time on their phones. And so there's mixed feelings among my advisory council. Some folks are telling me take the money anyway, like use the money for good, and other folks are saying I don't want to be affiliated with that company, and I don't think it's right. So I'm navigating that right now, honestly. But yeah, I'm just putting that out there that I think the corporate sponsorships will come, especially if you're in a big city because of the really compelling brand. But if you need ideas for how to start it for cheap and motivation for how to start it for cheap, I've got a lot of those.
We in Missouri, I don't remember the first year exactly, but last year we had a total of $5,000 in sponsorships for this statewide effort, and 3,000 of those turn around and go right back out the door in our cash prizes that we give to those who are named the most engaged neighbor, for example, and probably another 750, maybe to 1,000 is invested in the actual awards and the delivery of some of those awards. We do plaques for the cities and some things. So the rest of it is spent on trying to market it. But again, to Julia's point, really, we had some.
David.
I had some
things I need to do.
Had some media companies that jumped in and said we want to support this effort. We want to put together PSAs, and they did those for free. One of them here in Springfield, $42,000 of free advertising we got. I mean, that's a tremendous in-kind gift, far exceeding anything they would ever give us in terms of a cash sponsorship. So leveraging those types of in-kind gifts are really invaluable.
We have a question here, David, but Julie, if you have anything to share along this line as well. But how do you get people to report acts of neighboring? So that's maybe the $1 million question, not just acts of neighboring, but like that turnaround of like, how do you get people to, let you know that they've been engaged in stuff, et cetera. David, you want to speak to that at all?
How many times have we talked about this topic, Jennifer?
and we
probably have not landed on the perfect solution. We have some good ideas that have never developed. We've tried to pursue a sponsor or something like that we could have sort of like a Bomba socks model, like, report your act of neighboring and this sponsor donates $1 to the local food pantry or something. But we've had some conversations, but we've never found that right sponsor or somebody willing to do that type of thing. I think that's still a good model, and I think that's a winning idea. We've just not been able to make that happen. So we have just, promoted over and over and over. Go into the website, tell us about your act of neighboring, tell us about what you did. The first year we picked the best examples and we recognized them. Turned out that was kind of a turnoff to a lot of people because many people were doing their act of neighboring not to be recognized for it, doing it out of the goodness of their heart. So we changed that into just a random drawing. Submit your idea and tell us about what you did, and then we're going to draw a certain number of random examples and give gift cards. So we feel like that's kind of an incentive for some without the turnoff of saying Kathy did the best job with her flowers that she delivered or something. Other than that, I'm not sure that we've hit upon the golden answer to that, Jennifer, have we?
Well, maybe not. We know that there's a lot of things that go unreported, but I would say the fact that you've got 42,000 acts of neighboring reported isn't nothing.
Yes.
So I think one of the keys and what we've kind of tried to replicate nationally is that finding finding partners as close to the ground as possible. And so,
Yes,
for example, if
it's
you're a
true.
city and you're working and neighborhoods are all celebrating and you have a relationship with those neighborhood leaders, then you're much more likely to understand how many people came to the block parties in that neighborhood because you are close to the person who's close to the celebrations, right?
Yes.
And so creating those kinds of relationships and those kinds of structures for celebrating if you're doing something larger, I think has been the biggest amount of success if counting something like acts of neighboring is your metric. Julia, I don't know, since you've got some different metrics this year,
Hmm.
you've put some thought into what's the metric that matters to you. Acts of neighboring doesn't have to be your metric that matters. It's, something that we've chosen in a couple of areas, but there are other metrics that you could use so that you didn't have to worry so much about the report, each individual report. You have any thoughts on that, Julia?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's a broader question of like, do you want to measure the impact of the holiday and how do you want to measure on it? And like, why are you measuring it? Who are you reporting it
Right.
to? There's so much impact that you won't be able to measure. And even with the Good Neighbor Award winners, I had many Good Neighbor Award winners decline the award, because they don't want to feel like, something is made transactional out of what should be an everyday norm. And so yeah, it was never a goal of mine to count acts of neighboring. I wasn't familiar with that term. But even with success metrics I'm setting, like the number of blocks that have a communication channel, my goal isn't to have like an accurate count for a city of 1 million people. My goal, like Jennifer said, is to make sure that my partners, especially my neighborhood advisory council that are out in the communities, have the resources to support people to do that. And then we do understand the impact of the work, but trying to quantify a perfect number, I'm happy to share what I write in grant applications and what I share with funders and sponsors, but that's a mix of vanity metrics, like how many partners I have and how many people attend our events. And all of those are just as impactful. The fact that the Board of Supervisors unanimously sponsored the resolution, right? I think that's telling about the celebration as well. So there's so many things that you can talk about that describe the impact and the buy-in into the holiday beyond what you're able to quantify. So yeah, I think it depends on your goals and how you approach it.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for that. And I've mentioned a little bit about that in the Getting Started guide is that, having some of those ideas when you're setting those goals, like how you're going to measure them and what you want to measure, and thinking through that is helpful, because then you can choose things that you're able to actually to measure and get feedback on. We are at 12:59. I knew this would go really fast. I want to thank Julia and David for joining us. I want to thank all of you for joining us for the questions that you submitted. Again, I'm sorry if we didn't get to your particular question, but we really do want to hear from them. I put a survey at the end. The survey isn't so much about, how great we did, but really about how, if where you're at so that we can support you best. So if you're like, thanks, I'm going to be thinking about this, that's what we want to know. If you're like, yes, I'm thinking about it and I'd like to have more conversation, we'd love to know that so we can make sure we get connected with you. And if you're like, I'm all in, make sure I have that guide, I want in the community hub, then put that in the survey as well. And Megan will get you into the hub and get you kind of off and running. So really that's what the survey is about, is just so we can support you best and wherever you're at after this call. And we, again, just really, really thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing. You didn't show up on this call because this is the first time you ever heard about neighboring. You showed up on this call because you care about your community, you care where you live. And so thank you for that. You're what makes the world go round, and we appreciate you all. David, Julia, Megan, thank you, and have a lovely day. I can't wait to hear from all of you.